Our series begins by introducing us to an ordinary employee named Linda, whose life is moving at an incredibly boring and completely predictable pace. But suddenly, a bizarre and terrifying accident completely flips the scales, turning her entire life upside down by 180 degrees. And before we dive straight into the shocking details of the accident, let us first take a closer look at Linda's miserable daily life, because her personal appearance is always a bit messy and she simply does not take care of herself like the rest of the women in the office. Absolutely everyone treats her with a massive amount of disrespect and careless disregard. Even Donovan, the only person in the entire office who actually talks to her, only does it purely for his own selfish benefit. He casually walks up and takes all the massive financial reports she spent nearly 2 entire weeks meticulously putting together. He manipulates her with a smooth lie, claiming that the meeting room is simply far too small, so management wants to reduce the number of employees attending the presentation. Then, he smoothly reassures her, telling her not to worry about absolutely anything. He swears that since her name is clearly printed right there on the file, absolutely everyone in the room will know this is her brilliant work. And naturally, she believes his sweet words, simply because she has absolutely no other choice but to trust him. But the moment he walks into the meeting room, Linda quietly follows right behind him to secretly monitor the situation from a distance and see what is actually going on. And right there, she is completely shocked to watch him casually rip off the cover page with her name on it and throw it straight into the garbage can. He then boldly presents the entire project, acting as if the exhausting report was entirely his own brilliant creation. So she tries her absolute hardest to hold back her anger and tears. Later that night, she returns to her empty apartment and starts preparing dinner while emotionally venting to her pet parrot. She tells the bird absolutely everything that happened at the office, but she quickly brushes it off, convincing herself that it is completely fine and everything happens for a reason. She confidently declares that her entire miserable situation is going to completely change the moment Bradley, the CEO's son, officially takes over the company's management, because his late father had personally given her a solid promise that she would be officially promoted to vice president. So she excitedly begins building massive dreams and ambitions for her future. She imagines her salary skyrocketing, giving her the money to finally buy a much bigger, beautiful house. And she genuinely believes that her long-held daydreams are finally about to become her actual reality. The very next day, she arrives at the office and hears the massive news that Bradley has finally arrived to take charge. She is incredibly excited for this massive new step in her career, so she frantically throws her half-eaten sandwich straight into her desk drawer and rushes over to warmly welcome the new boss and introduce herself. But since Bradley is an incredibly arrogant, deeply superficial young man who thinks entirely too highly of himself, simply standing in front of her is pure torture for him, especially because she rushed over so fast that she still has embarrassing food crumbs stuck right on her face. So he quickly tries to silence her, brushing her off as fast as possible so he can escape into his luxurious new office. And the absolute first thing he does when he sits down is firmly order his assistant to transfer Linda to their furthest, most isolated branch. Or better yet, he casually suggests just firing her completely because it would be a million times easier. He then boldly orders the assistant to officially appoint Donovan as the new vice president instead. But the assistant quickly intervenes, warning him that this is a terrible idea. He reminds Bradley that his late father had explicitly promised Linda that exact promotion, and on top of that, he emphasizes that she is an absolute genius who literally carries the entire workload of the company right on her shoulders. So Bradley completely changes his strategy. He decides to ruthlessly exploit her skills until he extracts absolutely all the valuable data and hard work she has to offer. And only then will he officially kick her out of the company for good. Later in the middle of the day, Linda suddenly notices that the relationship between Bradley and Donovan seems incredibly close and overly familiar. They are casually standing around, joking and laughing loudly together, acting exactly like two lifelong best friends. At that exact moment, the female employee sitting right behind Linda completely shatters her world. She confirms Linda's worst fears, casually mentioning that the two men are actually incredibly close friends. She reveals that they graduated from the exact same prestigious university and even play golf together every single weekend. And to deliver the final devastating blow, she casually adds that Bradley is officially going to appoint Donovan as the new vice president. Hearing this, Linda completely loses her mind, because that specific promotion was the absolute last shred of hope she was clinging to in this miserable job. So she immediately storms straight into Bradley's office, desperately demanding to know exactly what is going on. She fiercely confronts him, pointing out that Donovan has only been working at the company for a measly 6 months, while she has dedicated 7 entire grueling years of her life to the firm. So she angrily asks him, "Who do you honestly think truly deserves this promotion?" Bradley quickly realizes how deeply betrayed and wronged she feels, So he smoothly tries to manage the situation, explaining that she is undeniably one of the smartest, most capable employees in the entire company. He admits she is an absolute genius when it comes to dealing with complex numbers and data, but he firmly tells her that she completely lacks one massively important skill: social interaction. He bluntly explains that he desperately needs a highly charismatic, socially intelligent leader who can effortlessly communicate with absolutely everyone around them. He needs someone who can smoothly close massive deals with the most powerful people in the country, and he coldly states that she is absolutely the furthest thing possible from being that kind of person. But when he notices how incredibly heavy and devastating his cruel words are on her, he quickly tries to calm the situation down. He offers her a massive challenge, suggesting she travel with him and the team to Bangkok for a highly important project. He explains there is a massive problem over there that desperately needs an immediate solution, so he promises that if she can personally solve the crisis and actively prove his harsh words wrong, she can officially consider the vice president's chair hers. And right in that intensely awkward moment, Bradley's beautiful fiancée Zoe gracefully walks into the office. Linda just stands there staring at her, completely overwhelmed as she painfully realizes the massive, undeniable difference in beauty and elegance between the two of them. So she awkwardly mutters, "Happy engagement, God willing," and immediately sprints back to her desk. She frantically packs up her belongings, desperate to escape the office as fast as possible before she completely loses control and bursts into tears right in front of absolutely everyone. Later, she tries her absolute hardest to comfort herself and ease the agonizing pain of the humiliation. She stands straight in front of her mirror, fiercely reminding herself that she is capable of absolutely anything. She promises herself that she will definitely prove her true worth and incredible abilities on this upcoming business trip. The very next day, Bradley is standing confidently with Donovan and the rest of the team at the airport, waiting to board their private plane. But suddenly they are completely shocked to see Linda marching straight toward them, tightly gripping her luggage, completely overflowing with intense enthusiasm to prove them all wrong. Bradley is instantly furious, because he honestly never imagined in a million years that she would actually show up. So once they board the plane, they completely isolate her, leaving her sitting all by herself to finish the massive pile of work she brought along. Meanwhile, the rest of the team gathers closely together in the lounge area, because Donovan is eagerly showing them a bizarre video Linda had posted on her personal social media page. And since absolutely everything about her is incredibly weird to them, her specific interests and the content of her videos are even stranger. So they all burst into loud, mocking laughter, completely making fun of her at her expense. And even though Linda has her headphones on with the volume turned all the way up, she can still clearly hear the incredibly loud sound of their cruel laughter. Driven by pure curiosity, she pulls off her headphones and innocently asks, "What's so funny? Make me laugh with you guys." And that is when she receives the absolute ultimate shock. She quickly discovers that her very own deeply personal video is the exact reason they are laughing so hard. Deeply wounded and utterly humiliated by their cruel, childish behavior, she furiously deletes every single piece of the massive project she had just finished working on. She then completely breaks down, crying uncontrollably in her seat. But in that exact horrifying moment, a massive mechanical failure violently rocks the entire airplane. And because half of the team is casually standing around instead of sitting in their seats, they absolutely do not have enough time to rush back and securely fasten their seatbelts. Due to the terrifying intensity of the violent shaking and the massive difference in air pressure, the airplane door is violently ripped completely off its hinges. The terrifying suction instantly pulls absolutely everyone out into the open sky, except for Donovan, who desperately grabs onto Linda's leg with a terrifying grip, absolutely refusing to let go. He pulls so incredibly hard that her seat is literally on the verge of being violently ripped right out of the floor. And when Linda reaches her absolute breaking point, realizing that his desperate grip is definitely going to cause her to lose her Seat entirely and be violently ripped out with him, she grabs a nearby fork. Without a single moment of hesitation, she viciously stabs him right in the hand, forcing him to let go. Instantly, he is violently sucked out of the plane and tumbles into the open sky as well. Seconds later, the massive airplane violently crashes directly into the ocean. Linda frantically struggles underwater, desperately unbuckling her seatbelt and swimming toward the surface as fast as humanly possible to reach the shore. The very next day, she finally wakes up from the terrifying shock of the crash. She opens her eyes and realizes she is completely stranded on a deserted island, completely surrounded by nothing but endless ocean, burning sand, and a massive, dense jungle right behind her. So she forces herself to instantly accept the horrifying reality, because she knows there is absolutely no time to waste on crying or panicking. She starts walking along the endless beach, desperately hoping she might run into absolutely anyone who can save her from this nightmare. By pure coincidence, she spots Bradley lying completely unconscious and motionless on the burning sand. She immediately sprints over to check on him. She quickly realizes he is suffering from a massive, severe injury to his leg, but once she confirms that he is actually still breathing, she forcefully drags his heavy body all the way to a large tree so he can comfortably lean against it in the shade. After that, she immediately starts putting every single primitive survival skill she has ever learned to the ultimate test. She is entirely determined to guarantee their survival until God sends someone to finally rescue them. And remarkably, she successfully manages to build a sturdy little tent to completely protect him from the harsh, burning rays of the sun. She then gathers empty coconut shells and carefully places them inside a deep hole she dug in the sand, ensuring they have a secure way to collect clean drinking water whenever it rains. As for Bradley, he remains completely unconscious until the very next day, and the moment he finally opens his eyes, he is utterly incapable of processing exactly what is happening around him. He looks up and sees Linda walking toward him carrying fresh water. She softly delivers the devastating news, telling him that unfortunately, absolutely all of his friends died in the crash, and they are the only two survivors left in the world. Then she continues her massive exploration mission to figure out how to start a fire so they can properly cook their food, instead of starving to death and joining their friends. And when her brilliant plan finally succeeds and she successfully roasts a fresh fish over the open flames, she is so overwhelmingly happy that she literally jumps up and down with pure joy. And even though Bradley is absolutely disgusted by the primitive food, he is forced to eat it just so he can stay alive. The very next day, Linda emerges from the dense jungle, completely flying high with absolute joy. She excitedly runs over to him and proudly announces, "I found a snail." She passionately explains that there are actually many different species of snails, but this specific type happens to taste absolutely incredible. But Bradley is completely fed up. He feels absolutely exhausted by this ridiculous caveman lifestyle that she seems to be enjoying so incredibly much, so he furiously snaps at her, demanding to know if she has even bothered to try and make a proper distress signal. He yells, asking why she hasn't written a massive help sign on the beach with tree branches, hoping a passing plane might see them, or even considered setting the entire jungle on fire to create a massive smoke signal. So she calmly explains that her absolute top priority right now is ensuring they can simply survive and maintain a somewhat normal life by securing enough food and clean water. But hearing this, he completely loses his temper. He aggressively insults her, screaming, "What kind of absolute stupidity is this?" He mockingly asks if her ultimate lifelong dream was to become a pathetic nanny, and now she is finally achieving it at his expense. And right there, Linda officially reaches her absolute breaking point, because they are no longer sitting in the corporate office, and he is absolutely no longer her boss, whom she is forced to tolerate under any circumstances just to keep her miserable job. So without saying another word, she calmly packs up all her supplies, turns her back, and walks completely away, leaving him entirely alone. She wants him to brutally realize that without her, he is utterly incapable of doing absolutely anything to survive, especially since the massive, painful wound on his leg completely prevents him from even standing up. But Bradley just laughs sarcastically at her. He mockingly yells after her, "Don't forget to take your stupid snail with you." But as one agonizing hour slowly bleeds into the next, the entire day completely disappears, and he soon finds himself desperately hallucinating about a single drop of water to cure his agonizing, life-threatening dehydration. He weakly calls out her name over and over again into the empty night. The very next day, Linda finally decides to take pity on him. She returns to their camp and gently gives him some water, simply because she does not want him to die and leave her completely alone on this terrifying island. And naturally, after enduring such absolute agonizing suffering, his arrogant attitude completely vanishes. He looks at her and sincerely apologizes for his incredibly cruel behavior. He even deeply apologizes for the promotion she lost because of him, admitting that his decisions were absolutely wrong from the very beginning. So she accepts his apology and casually informs him that she spotted a wild boar deep in the jungle. She confidently declares that she is going to hunt it down entirely by herself because they desperately need real food, and that massive animal alone could easily feed them for an entire week. Bradley stares at her in absolute disbelief. He cannot comprehend the sheer confidence in her voice, completely unable to imagine how a normal woman like her could possibly take down such a massive, terrifying beast. And right at that moment, we see Linda expertly carving a thick piece of wood into a deadly, razor-sharp spear. She silently tracks the boar's massive footprints deep into the dense jungle. But the second she finds it, the terrifying beast aggressively charges straight at her. So she rapidly scrambles high up into a tree. Then she fearlessly leaps right onto the massive animal's back, violently plunging the wooden spear deep into its body. She relentlessly strikes the beast over and over again until it finally stops moving completely. In that exact moment, she feels an incredible, overwhelming rush of pure adrenaline and bursts into victorious, triumphant laughter. She proudly marches straight back to Bradley, tightly holding the boar's massive, severed head, just to absolutely prove to him that she could easily do it. And for the very first time since the horrific crash, they actually sit down together exactly like two normal friends. They share a massive, delicious meal, casually joking and laughing together under the stars. And the very next day, she continues her massive exploration deep into the jungle, but suddenly she stumbles across a beautiful, flowing waterfall. She is absolutely overjoyed because they finally have a permanent source of fresh drinking water and no longer have to desperately wait for the rain. But suddenly, she hears the distinct, loud sound of a boat engine. So she immediately sprints straight toward the beach with overwhelming enthusiasm, frantically preparing to scream for their help. But in one single, terrifying moment, she goes completely silent. She freezes perfectly still in her tracks and absolutely refuses to call out to them because she suddenly realizes a dark truth. She knows that if that boat actually rescues them, she will be forced to return straight back to her miserable old life. A life completely filled with agonizing feelings of absolute failure and crushing loneliness. But out here on this island, she is finally discovering her true self. And she actually has Bradley right there beside her, fully sharing this incredible experience. So she casually walks right back to Bradley, acting completely normal, as if absolutely nothing happened. But by now, he has officially reached his absolute breaking point. He angrily snaps at her, pointing out that almost 2 entire weeks have passed. He desperately demands to know exactly when they are going to get out of this hellhole. So she calmly reminds him that the most important thing in terrifying situations like this is to maintain a positive, optimistic mindset. Hearing this, he completely loses his temper. He furiously screams, asking what kind of delusional optimism she is talking about while they are trapped in this absolute misery. He then aggressively suggests that since she is so incredibly smart and capable, she should just build them a small wooden boat. He insists they can use it to sail across the water until they reach absolutely anywhere that can rescue them. So she tries to put on a fake smile, pretending to be incredibly enthusiastic about his idea. She calmly tells him that it sounds beautiful and all, but she bluntly asks him what exactly he is missing right now. She points out that they have fresh drinking water, plenty of food, delicious fruit, and she is taking perfect care of him. In that exact moment, he realizes the horrifying truth. He sees that she actually loves this situation, and it looks like she genuinely wants to live the rest of her life exactly like this. So he furiously packs his things and completely separates from her, desperately wanting to prove that he absolutely does not need her existence to survive. He aggressively tries to build his own little tent to live in, and he even writes the word "help" massively on the beach using palm leaves, foolishly believing that this alone will send rescue planes rushing to save them. But by the very next day, he completely hits rock bottom because he has absolutely no water and not a single bite of food. He becomes so incredibly starved that his brain actually starts convincing him to eat the disgusting bugs crawling right in front of him. And when he completely loses all hope, he crawls right back to Linda like a defeated puppy. He desperately tries to smooth things over and apologize for what he did. And when he arrives, he is completely shocked to see that her camp has evolved even further. She now has razor-sharp tools, a massive variety of fresh fruits, and is comfortably sitting there eating perfectly roasted fish. So he is painfully forced to beg for her forgiveness in his own pathetic way. He awkwardly tells her that she was absolutely right, claiming that there is nothing better than good company in terrifying situations like this. He forces a smile and asks why they should ever have to be alone. And even though she perfectly understands that he is only saying all of this just so he can eat and drink, she actually agrees to forgive him. She kindly allows him to sit down and share her massive meal. But she doesn't just stop there, because after he finishes eating, she actually takes him on a grand tour across the entire island just to show him exactly what is out there. They climb all the way up the massive mountain, and she proudly shows him all the hidden fruit trees. But then, she aggressively points to a very specific, dark area at the far edge of the jungle marked by a strange X shape. She strictly warns him to absolutely never go anywhere near that specific spot. She chillingly explains that it is heavily infested with highly venomous insects, and a single tiny bite from one of them could instantly end his life. Later, while they are carefully making their way back down, a terrifying disaster suddenly strikes. A massive chunk of the Rocky Mountain violently collapses right underneath Linda's feet. She is literally inches away from falling to her death, but she desperately digs her hands into the dirt, fighting with everything she has to pull herself back up. And without a single second of hesitation, Bradley violently grabs her arms and successfully pulls her all the way to safety. And from that exact breathtaking moment, a completely brand new chapter officially begins between them because she finally truly trusts him. So she specially gathers a batch of fresh, delicious fruit just so they can sit and eat together. offering it as a genuine token of gratitude for his incredible bravery. Later that evening, he completely opens up and starts telling her the dark truth about his childhood. He confesses that he was raised in a cold, massive house that was entirely completely empty of any real emotion. He explains that his father was a ruthlessly practical businessman, and his mother was incredibly controlling, caring about absolutely nothing except her perfect public image. And because of that, he admits he usually treats people with extreme cruelty, simply because it is the only way of interacting he has ever witnessed in his entire life. Hearing this, she instantly realizes that all of his arrogant, hurtful actions were simply a direct result of his toxic upbringing, so she decides to completely open her heart to him as well. She drops a massive bombshell, revealing that she was actually married once before. But she sadly adds that her husband tragically died in a brutal car accident. However, when she notices how deeply sympathetic Bradley looks, she quickly corrects him. She bluntly confesses that her late husband was absolutely not the greatest man in the world, mainly because he was a severe, raging alcoholic. She explains that every single time his drinking got so insanely out of control that he couldn't even see straight, she would frantically hide the car keys to physically prevent him from driving in that terrifying state. But one fateful day, they got into a massive, explosive fight. He flew into a blind, terrifying rage and did completely unforgivable things he absolutely never should have done. So, completely broken and pushed to her absolute limit, she finally pulled the keys out and just let him take them. She deeply confesses that she just walked away and completely let him leave, and naturally, he never made it back home. As she recalls the agonizing details of that horrific day, her eyes fill with heavy tears. She looks at Bradley and intimately tells him that he is actually the very first person she has ever opened up to about this dark secret. Then she takes a massive emotional leap. She softly confesses that she genuinely feels it was absolute destiny that brought the two of them together on this deserted island. She intimately suggests that because of this undeniable fate, they should just stay here and live together forever. Bradley stares at her in absolute, terrifying shock. He simply cannot process what he is hearing, completely unsure if she is being dead serious or if she is just heavily intoxicated by the intense emotion of the moment. The very next day, they are violently awakened by a massive, torrential rainstorm. The wind is so incredibly brutal that it completely destroys the flimsy tent she had built. So they frantically grab their things and sprint deep into a dark cave just to hide from the freezing rain, staying completely huddled together inside for the entire terrifying night. But when she wakes up the next morning, she realizes with pure panic that she is entirely alone. She instantly assumes that Bradley has completely abandoned her, so she frantically sprints out of the cave, desperately searching for him deep inside the jungle, until suddenly he casually walks toward the sound of her frantic screaming. He warmly smiles and tells her that he simply woke up early to go hunt for some fresh breakfast. He then enthusiastically encourages her to build a brand new tent to replace the ruined one, but he suggests that this time they build it much further away from the unpredictable ocean just to be completely safe. So she happily takes the golden opportunity to actually teach him how to build a tent entirely by himself. She gently explains that he needs to learn these survival skills just in case an emergency happens and he ever finds himself completely alone without her. Later, they take a long, peaceful walk together through the dense jungle. And out of nowhere, he sweetly suggests that he should be the one to cook dinner tonight so she can finally sit back and rest for a bit. Linda is absolutely thrilled by the offer, because she genuinely feels that he is finally starting to reciprocate the deep romantic feelings she has for him. Later that evening, he proudly serves her the meal he prepared entirely by himself, but suddenly, right in the middle of eating, she is hit with a terrifying wave of intense dizziness. The room spins so violently that she collapses hard onto the dirt floor, completely paralyzed and utterly incapable of moving a single muscle. And in that exact horrifying moment, Bradley coldly takes advantage of his brilliant plan. He immediately steals the small wooden boat she had painstakingly built with her own two hands and desperately tries to escape out into the open ocean. We quickly realize that he intentionally poisoned her food with a toxic plant just to eliminate her, because he was absolutely certain she would never willingly let him escape the island alone. But unfortunately for him, his massive master plan completely blows up in his face. Because the fragile wooden boat is incredibly weak, it completely fails to withstand the violent crashing waves and aggressively flips over, throwing him violently into the dark, raging sea. The powerful current effortlessly drags his exhausted body straight back to the shore. As for Linda, the toxic effect of the poisoned food turns out to be incredibly weak on her resilient system. She violently throws up everything she ate and miraculously recovers completely. The very next day, when Bradley finally regains consciousness, he desperately tries to smooth things over and play the victim once again, because he is absolutely terrified of exactly what she might do to him for his brutal betrayal. He frantically apologizes, swearing that he was just terrified of dying on this island without ever seeing his family again. He desperately lies, claiming he absolutely never intended to actually hurt her, but surprisingly, she acts completely normal, As if absolutely nothing happened, she calmly smiles and says, "I completely understand your situation, by the way. But you really should have used a much higher dose of the toxin if you actually wanted it to work on me." And she doesn't just stop there. She actually roasts a massive octopus specifically for him, sweetly claiming he needs to eat to recover the energy he lost during his little escape attempt. But right after he takes his very first bite, a terrifying sensation violently takes over his body. He feels an intense, creeping numbness completely paralyze him, to the point where he cannot even move the muscles in his own face. And that is when she calmly reveals the horrifying truth. She chillingly explains that the specific octopus he just swallowed is highly toxic. She details how the toxins aggressively attack the nervous system, completely blocking all electrical signals. She bluntly states that he will be entirely paralyzed and utterly incapable of moving until the violent effects finally wear off. And naturally, she orchestrated this entire terrifying scenario just to slowly take her cold revenge and brutally teach him that his absolute only source of safety is firmly in her hands. She then calmly picks up a sharp metal tool, holds it directly over the blazing fire until it is glowing red hot, and sadistically brands his bare leg with it. He is forced to endure the agonizing burning pain in absolute silence because the paralysis makes him completely unable to express his horrifying agony. 2 agonizing days later, she finds him still holding a massive grudge and absolutely refusing to speak a single word to her. She casually tries to strike up a normal conversation, but when he stubbornly maintains his cold, silent treatment, she simply leaves him sitting there and walks deep into the jungle to find something to eat. But by pure terrifying coincidence, she spots a small rescue boat rapidly approaching the shore, and standing right there on the deck is Zoe, Bradley's beautiful fiancée, accompanied by the boat's captain. Linda is absolutely paralyzed with shock, because she is entirely unwilling to surrender the perfect life she has built here just so he can return to his epic love story with his glamorous fiancée. But she quickly forces a massive fake smile and pretends to be overwhelmingly happy to see them. She excitedly yells, "What took you guys so incredibly long? Is there a massive rescue team following right behind you, or does absolutely no one else know we are here?" Zoe happily explains that she privately rented this specific boat to personally search every single island in the area. She proudly adds that thank God she finally found them, so they absolutely won't be needing any official rescue teams at all. And in that exact moment, a brilliant, terrifying new plan instantly lights up in Linda's dark mind. She needs to completely eliminate Zoe and the captain right now, so she intentionally guides them straight up the treacherous mountain path, leading them directly toward the exact same collapsing cliff where she almost fell to her death before. And just as she planned, the moment Zoe steps onto the fragile ground, the earth violently crumbles beneath her feet, and she instantly slips over the edge. But by pure luck, the captain reacts with lightning speed and desperately grabs her arm. He frantically screams for Linda to run over and help him pull her up. In that terrifying suspended moment, Linda enters a massive, agonizing internal struggle. Should she awaken the last shred of her buried humanity and save the innocent woman's life? Or should she ruthlessly eliminate them both just to protect the twisted, perfect life she has spent an entire month building? The scene then suddenly cuts to Linda walking entirely alone back to Bradley's camp. As for what exactly happened to Zoe and the captain, absolutely no one knows the horrifying truth except her. But she returns looking incredibly depressed and completely haunted. She isolates herself for 2 entire days, absolutely refusing to speak a single word to Bradley. It gets so bad that he is actually the one trying to initiate conversation just to figure out what is wrong with her. Later that evening, she suddenly hears Zoe's desperate voice calling her name from deep inside the dark water, and suddenly a horrifying, soaking wet figure drags itself onto the beach. It is Zoe, slowly crawling toward her and agonizingly asking, "Why did you do this to me?" Linda is completely paralyzed by absolute terror. She cannot believe the woman is actually still alive. She frantically grabs a heavy piece of wood, desperately trying to smash the horrifying figure. But in that exact moment, she violently snaps back to reality. She realizes that there is absolutely no Zoe standing there. The entire terrifying encounter was nothing more than a dark, guilt-ridden hallucination. Meanwhile, Bradley is taking a long walk through the dense jungle, hoping to successfully hunt a wild boar himself. But by pure horrifying coincidence, he suddenly spots a human hand sticking straight out of the loose sand. He notices that an entire body has been hastily buried right there. He frantically rushes over to confirm if what he is seeing is actually real, and that is when the absolute, most devastating shock of his entire life violently hits him. He instantly recognizes that the lifeless hand belongs to his beloved fiancée Zoe because of the distinct engagement ring still resting on her finger. He completely breaks down in absolute, agonizing despair, because he never in a million years imagined that Linda was capable of reaching such a terrifying, murderous level of insanity. He violently rips the ring off her lifeless finger and sprints straight back to the camp. He aggressively confronts Linda, sarcastically asking, Are you still feeling depressed, or has your mental health magically improved? Thank God. She looks at him, completely terrified and deeply confused by the sudden, aggressive way he is talking to her, and she completely fails to understand exactly what just happened to make him turn on her in such a terrifying, aggressive way. But he is absolutely astounded that she is still playing dumb, acting completely normal as if absolutely nothing happened. So he aggressively shoves his fiancée's engagement ring right in her face, fiercely demanding an explanation for the horrifying situation. And right then, she tries her absolute hardest to appear completely innocent. She intentionally breathes heavily to look incredibly nervous and panicked. She desperately tells him that she was genuinely trying to help her, but Zoe simply slipped and fell off the edge. She cries that she wanted to bring her straight back to him, but fate had a completely different, tragic plan. And she claims she refused to tell him the truth simply because she was terrified he would never believe her, but he is absolutely certain she is lying straight to his face. So he sarcastically throws her dark past right back at her, asking if this was just another accidental tragedy, exactly like her late husband's death. He then violently pulls a sharp weapon out of his pocket, completely determined to end her life, exactly like she ended his fiancé's. And she instantly realizes that no amount of talking will ever change his murderous mind. So she sprints as fast as humanly possible, desperately fleeing deep into the dark jungle, and he frantically spins around in circles, completely losing sight of her as if she melted into thin air. But suddenly, she violently leaps right on top of him from above, having secretly hidden high up in the branches of a tree. She aggressively tries to finish him off, but he proves to be far physically stronger than her, successfully shoving her off and landing a brutal punch right to her eye. But with terrifying brilliance, she actually manages to snatch the sharp weapon right out of his hand during the struggle. So now he is the one forced to frantically run away for his life, and by pure accident, he blindly runs straight into the forbidden dark zone marked with the massive X, because he figures that even the deadliest insects couldn't possibly be more terrifying than her. But in that exact moment, he is completely shocked to discover there are absolutely no venomous insects at all. Instead, he stares in absolute disbelief at a massive, luxurious mansion sitting right on the mountain at the far end of the beach. So he sprints straight toward it, utterly incapable of believing if what he is seeing is actually real or what the hell is going on. And the moment he arrives, he violently pulls on the glass balcony door with every single ounce of strength he has, knowing this is his absolute last hope for survival. And inside, he finds a massive refrigerator completely packed with fresh water, delicious food, fruit, and all the comforts of a perfectly normal life. But right before he can even enjoy a single bite or desperately make up for his agonizing starvation, he suddenly hears Linda's chilling voice echoing through the mansion's built-in wall speakers. She sarcastically congratulates him, saying, "You finally reached absolute safety." But she firmly warns him not to bother searching for any sharp tools to defend himself, because she already disposed of absolutely every single one of them. She adds that there is only one left on the entire island, and she is holding it right now. And she bursts into arrogant, mocking laughter, calling him an absolute idiot for actually believing she randomly found a sharp metal tool washed up from the ocean. Because since when does the sea just randomly spit out perfectly forged tools like that? So he completely panics, horrifyingly realizing that she has been playing a twisted psychological game with him this entire time, and he frantically looks around for the hidden security cameras tracking his every move, aggressively trying to smash them to pieces so she can no longer see him. Meanwhile, she is sitting comfortably in a high-tech control room, casually watching him panic through the surveillance screens, and she is incredibly happy, completely feeding off his absolute terror and utter desperation. So she chillingly confesses that she has been hiding a massive, dark secret from him. She calmly reveals that they actually could have left the island a long time ago, because she had clearly spotted a rescue boat out on the water, but she completely refused to call out to them. And she coldly asks, "Why would I ever want to go back to my miserable old life? Why would I return to the crushing loneliness, the relentless bullying, and the toxic nepotism at work? I just desperately needed a little more time to heal my shattered mental state out here." She casually explains that on that specific day, she had secretly spotted the mansion's servants delivering fresh food from the boat straight into the house. So she patiently waited in the shadows until they completely finished their job and sailed away. And then she simply walked right through the front doors and lived her absolute best life inside the luxurious mansion. She ate and drank as much delicious food as she possibly could, and she would just throw the pathetic, primitive leftovers out to him every now and then, just to completely guarantee that he would stay helplessly dependent on her. She intimately explains that she had already built a beautiful, perfect new life in her imagination with her brand new lover, which was obviously him, but she angrily screams that he was the one who completely destroyed all of her dreams and aggressively refused to stay by her side. Meanwhile, Bradley just lets her keep talking all she wants, because on the other side of the mansion, he successfully manages to smash absolutely every single security camera in sight, and he carefully sneaks through the dark hallways, desperately trying to reach the exact room where she is hiding so he can finally finish her off. And right in the middle of her deep, twisted venting, she casually confesses the horrifying truth about Zoe. She admits that she honestly never intended to actually kill his fiancée. Yes, she confesses she grabbed a heavy rock from the ground and violently smashed Zoe with it to make her and the captain fall off the deadly cliff. But she insanely argues that this absolutely does not mean her intentions were evil. On the contrary, she claims she only committed the brutal act to fiercely protect their beautiful existence together on the island. On top of that, she aggressively tries to play intense mind games with him. She desperately tries to convince him that what happened was actually the absolute best possible scenario for both of them. She asks him, "Why do you honestly think we were the only two people who survived that horrific plane crash?" She firmly insists that it was absolutely not just some random coincidence, but rather a powerful, undeniable sign that they were destined to complete their lives together. And after she finally finishes her deeply emotional, twisted speech, she firmly grabs a loaded shotgun. She steps right out of the control room, fully intending to finish him off once and for all, completely convinced that he was the one who started this brutal betrayal. But at that exact moment, Bradley desperately decides to try a completely different strategy. He instantly backs down, drops to his knees, and begs for absolute mercy. He cries, "I am so incredibly sorry. I have absolutely no idea how my twisted mind let me do this to you for a second time." And he intentionally forces himself to cry heavily right in front of her. He emotionally reminds her of his dark childhood trauma that turned him into a heartless monster, making him completely incapable of realizing the true value of the people in his life, especially her. So he desperately begs her to open a brand new page and live together peacefully on the island, exactly like a caveman and his wife. And surprisingly, she actually falls for his desperate lies. She looks at him, sincerely says, "I love you," and slowly lowers the deadly shotgun. But instantly, he ruthlessly betrays her all over again. He violently grabs a heavy glass vase and smashes it right against her head, fully intending to end her life. But she had entirely anticipated this exact moment of betrayal. So she swiftly grabs a heavy metal golf club and viciously strikes him right in the stomach. She shoots him one final, ice-cold look and completely finishes him off without a single ounce of regret in her heart. And exactly 1 year later, we see Linda acting like a completely different person. She is confidently playing golf at the highly prestigious 19th annual celebrity tournament. We quickly learn that after they finally rescued her from the island, her incredible story blew up and became massively famous, because the entire world believed she had miraculously managed to survive entirely alone for all that time. So she ruthlessly exploited the massive media attention and published a best-selling book detailing every single fake detail of her harrowing survival experience. And from that exact moment, incredible wealth, fame, and success began pouring into her life. She then proudly announces to the cheering press that she is already preparing her highly anticipated second book. She claims the new book focuses entirely on self-development and solving deep psychological trauma. She flashes a bright, fake smile at the cameras and claims her ultimate fundamental goal is simply to help innocent people heal. And right after that, we see her driving away in her luxurious, expensive car, living her absolutely perfect life exactly as if nothing dark or horrifying ever happened. And with that chilling ending, the events of our series finally come to a close.